The week I was diagnosed, I don't remember how many days after, but I had 2 births within less than 2 weeks after being diagnosed. And my backup doulas knew they were ready to jump in at any moment. But I said, I think I need to do this. I need to get out of this bubble of I have cancer and get out of it.
Welcome to the CCDS Doula Collaboration Podcast, where birth and postpartum professionals come together to learn, grow, and support one another. I'm your host, Melissa Harley, a doula trainer and passionate advocate for the power of birth and postpartum care. This podcast is a space for authentic conversations with doulas and other perinatal professionals, from those just starting out to seasoned experts shaping our field. We'll hear from those in my circles, industry leaders, and community change makers. And I hope that you'll find inspiration, education, connection, and collaboration here. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get to it. Well, hello. It's nice to see you.
Hi, Melissa.
Danielle, it's been a while since we've seen each other, so tell me what's been going on with you and tell everyone that's here a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I've been doing doula work full-time for the last 7 years. When I initially started, I was just kind of tiptoeing around, seeing if it was something for me. I wasn't really sure. So I did my initial training, but never got certified. And then after a couple years into it, TRICARE Insurance started covering doulas, which is what led me to you, because it was actually more than 4 years into it, I guess, actually, because my training was too old for me to do my certification. So I had to retake it. But background-wise, I've been in women's healthcare for 28 years, working in OBGYN offices. I worked as a birth assistant at a birth center, which fueled my drive to then go back to nursing school and further my career. And I became a labor nurse, and I did that for 5+ years before deciding to give it a shot with doula work and see how it went. And it's just been amazing. Doors just opened, and it was clear that this was my path and that I could do what I wanted to do in the way I wanted to do it in this field.
So just on the labor nurse, tell everybody a little bit about how you see your role differently as a doula than a labor nurse.
Well, I see my role differently in that I have the time to focus on the clients that hire me. I'm able to provide a lot more education. Even as a labor nurse, that was always really important to me. But we don't have the time. We're able to show up for them, to advocate for their birth plan. We know them, first of all, versus a labor nurse where you're just getting handed a birth plan for the first time. We get to build that relationship with them a little bit deeper. We know how dad is, we know their plans, and I'm able to support them through labor. As a labor nurse, I'm not able to do that. I come in once an hour. On a slow day, maybe I was able to do more. But honestly, we weren't given any doula training at the time when I was a labor nurse. Spinning babies, what? That's just not something you learn in nursing school. It's to manage their care, reduce risks and issues, and chart and cover your butt. Like those things. The focus isn't on supporting.
Yeah, some of my friends and colleagues who are labor delivery nurses, they speak to how in nursing school, they don't even really learn comfort measures, just very basic comfort measures. They get a L&D rotation, but it's quick. And like you said, they all say clinical care is the priority, and as it should be. I say to all of my students, I think that we make such a good team with those nurses because they can focus on the clinical care, and we can focus on that emotional support and some of those other things that they don't have time for.
I love working with the medical team and the nurses and the doctors, and it's a nice dance that we do because I know their terminology before they even speak it. I know what they're seeing. So I try and, to a point, turn that nursing stuff, that clinical off, but I can't completely. But I think it does lend in helping me to facilitate communication between my clients and them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you.
And
yeah, thanks for sharing a little bit about that. So I invited you on today to highlight a little bit about your recent story and what you have been dealing with personally, because it's really touched me to follow you on social media, see your journey as you have been battling breast cancer.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear a little bit about maybe what you're comfortable sharing when you received your diagnosis. What was happening in your doula world? What was going on in your personal world What was that like?
Yeah, well, it was March of 2023 that I was diagnosed. Really took me by surprise. It just happened. And at the time, doula-wise, I had a full client load when that happened. I think I had a couple months blocked. Once you find out, there's all these tests and screenings and everything like that. So I think I had clients, but I think I had like maybe May and June blocked off for vacations and stuff. So Lord works in mysterious ways. So I had some time blocked off, which ended up working out well with the initial treatment and surgery and everything like that. Like it couldn't have worked out more perfectly the way it did. But I did pretty much have a full client load for the year up until I could. I was mentoring doulas, so that was nice. I had built a team of doulas, 2 or 3. So I had them on board as well and collaborating. So a good support system. And then in my personal life, the very day I got my diagnosis in that phone call, my husband had come home and said that he had got reached out to for a job interview in Chattanooga.
Oh my goodness.
So that, I didn't share that with everybody else initially, that I also had that going on behind the scenes as well, but I'm here. So obviously that progressed forward through all of this. And thankfully my husband had to step up and be the leader as far as taking on a lot of that move.
That's a lot of life change in a short period of time.
It really was. But my husband was in the military, and for 20 years, I am used to a lot of change and adapting and moving. So that played well for us that we had that.
Did you think about in the beginning a little bit of what it was going to take from you emotionally, and then working with clients and navigating their emotional needs? And, doulas, we take on some of what's going on in the world of our clients. And so I imagine that must have been really challenging. What was that like for you?
At first, when I got my diagnosis, of course, I was scared, afraid, all of those things. But I think I'm a workaholic. I'm just very passionate about what I do. So I remember when the day I finally got to meet with my oncologist for the first time, of course, there was the initial questions of explain to me what's going on. What am I looking at? But a lot of my questions were, can I still go on this vacation? Am I going to be able to continue my doula work? And the oncologist and the patient care advocate, which is like my cancer doula, I called her. I'm like, I kept thinking in the weeks leading up, I was like, I need a cancer doula. That's got to be a thing. And then magically, before the doctor even came in, this woman walks into the room and I'm like, that's not the doctor that I picked. But she's a patient care coordinator and she was there at every visit with me and I could reach out to her. So I did. I had a cancer doula.
That's awesome.
Both of them said, you are going to do great. And I didn't even, I just thought that's something they tell everybody. But I asked them later on, I'm like, why did you say that? And they're like, we can just tell. With the questions you were asking, you were more worried about continuing to work and having a positive attitude, not just succumbing to the diagnosis is key at getting through it.
So when you went into that treatment, what did they tell you to expect as far as like how you would feel and kind of how long it would be, all of those things?
They played it up like it was going to be easy, like treatments come a long way. And it really has. It really has. And I was stage 1, so I just had a lumpectomy, which did challenge things. But like I said, thankfully, I had that 2 months. So by the time I had another birth, I was good to go with hip squeezes and stuff. It wasn't challenging. I was still able to do that. So perfect timing. But they said, who knows how it was going to go. But with nausea and different side effects, that I should do pretty well. And that, yes, there'd be fatigue and everything. I think with how much we give to our clients, I'm usually that person that wants to give, whether it's my friends, my family, my clients. I want to support them in every way, but I don't ask for it myself very often. But from the get-go, I knew that I wanted to let everybody in on what was happening with me and that I wanted to accept that support and that for once I needed to prioritize me and self-care. So yes, I still had my client load and that was my distraction. Just like we talk about to our clients in labor, don't focus on it. Don't focus on the contractions until they're demanding your attention. Have things that can distract you. Well, I had a move coming up and I had my client load to distract me. So me giving to them emotionally was a way for me to not think about what was going on in my life because I had plenty of time for that to be consuming in the evenings or whatever. So
yeah, really gives me goosebumps just to
I
think
had
about.
the week I was diagnosed, I don't remember how many days after, but I had 2 births within less than 2 weeks after being diagnosed. And my backup doulas knew they were ready to jump in at any moment. But I said, I think I need to do this. I need to get out of this bubble of I have cancer and get out of it. But I remember going to the hospital, and I'd worked with many of the people at that hospital as a labor nurse. They all knew me really well. And I remember pulling them aside and sharing the news with them and them surrounding me with support. But my clients didn't know. They didn't know yet. I was waiting for a full diagnosis and like everything. They didn't know. I wanted to protect them from that and just show up for them. But I wanted them to know in case I had an emotional breakdown or,
Right.
or something. I didn't know. After the fact, my clients are like, wow, I just thought they really loved you at that hospital. They were just hugging on you and just like so supportive. And
Wow. Well, they probably were. Extra support never hurts, right?
it was kind of extra. But that led into sharing that news. I shared it with my clients before I even shared it on social media. I wanted them to hear it from me, but I was so nervous about sharing that news. I love these families. I wanted to continue to support them. But honestly, I didn't know how things were going to go. But I reached out to them each individually. And I guess I was afraid that they'd be like, oh, we don't want a doula that has cancer, is going through treatment or whatever. I assured them all that I had a backup, like solid backups, which I have to say, my main backup was expecting. And she was the very last client that I had on my birth roster for October that I had then cut it off, taking off any new clients. But she was expecting. So she was planning on having some downtime, but she stepped up and through that whole time was...
Yeah, well, shout out to the backup.
Yeah, shout out to the backup who was expecting and planning to take her 3rd trimester off of not stressing or anything like that. So I was surprised. All my clients were like, absolutely. They were there for me 100%. And as things went on, I would go to prenatal visits and try and 100% focus on them. But then they would draw it back and be like, but how are you? How are things going? They were so inspiring to me, and they were praying over me, and they were telling me their family's journeys with things. They were giving me gifts and giving that support right back. It was amazing.
It's almost like you were douling them and they were douling you right back.
Absolutely.
And some of doula support, a lot of doula support, it's just intuitive, right? And I say this in my trainings, like if you were going to someone's home, one of your friends, and you walk in the door and they just got really bad news or something happened and they needed immediate care, what would you do? And the answer is you would love on them. You might put a hand on the shoulder. You might offer words of encouragement or some other kind of support. And I think sometimes we really overthink this doula thing because really it's just that meeting them where they are. I'm glad your clients were able to do that for you. That's a pretty amazing part. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Were. And then eventually I shared on social media, and that's when I knew that I wanted that word to go out. I didn't want to have to update people a lot. So I went online and kind of journaled, made weekly updates and posts letting people know where it was at. And I hoped that it would get some people out there getting screened for breast cancer if they were ignoring it. It would also help people understand what people are going through, because not everybody wants to share what they're going through or what's helpful. I created a Amazon gift, wish list, and I created it weekly of things that I was dealing with, side effects and everything like that, so that they could help me out.
How were the side effects for you?
I would say they were mild comparatively to other people's journeys, because I think that's what you do. You meet people along the way and what they're going through. And so you compare and you're like, mine's not that bad. But of course, for my husband, or especially my really good friend that walked this walk with me, she was my doula through this, my friend. She would let me vent, and she got to have a front seat to see how tired I got. And I didn't even realize it until after I was kind of over it, how she got to finally vent about what it was like for her watching me go through that and trying to be strong for me.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to have that support. I shared with you, I think, in messaging that my dad is going through chemotherapy right now, and he's about halfway through. His chemotherapy symptoms have been pretty mild too. And we've been really surprised because we were kind of ready for the worst, what you see on TV, which I think is a lot like people do with birth. If they are not familiar with the birth process, you think, oh my gosh, it's going to be whatever we see, the dramatic on TV or in movies or things like that. And we've really been encouraged by, number one, the setup and the people that are there. He was so excited that they brought like sandwiches over during his treatment. And he was like, I got a sandwich. I took a nap. And they gave him medication that some of it was steroid that made him feel like more energized immediately. But it's been a little better than we anticipated. And so it's nice to hear someone else say that too.
There was definitely side effects. I know that I was tired. I tried to block out any other obligations because I'm like, I got my hands in all kinds of different pots normally, but I just blocked everything out besides my treatments, taking care of me, trying to help with what I could with the move, and then taking care of my clients. But I spaced out my appointments, didn't take anything on, said no to a lot of things, but I would get tired. I know times where I was like dragging at my appointment and probably really, really tired, but nobody led on. Also, going through the hair loss was a challenge, going through like, what are people going to think? What are they going to say? But I tried to really keep a positive attitude through it all. I'm not a big earring person, but I tried to do that. Tried to put on makeup,
Did you end up shaving your head? I know some people do that.
I did. Mine was, I got really fortunate and like my hair really didn't start. It was like week 5 that it started falling out. So it's kind of delayed. And I thought, okay, this is it. But no, from week 5 to I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it was slowly, gradually, and evenly almost shedding and coming out. And I think it was week 7 or week 8, I finally was like, okay, my hair's not looking very nice. It's kind of thin and stringy. And so I got a pixie cut, went down to that. And I thought, okay, I'm comfortable right here. And then it wasn't until my 12th week, my very last chemo infusion, that my friends had come for it and were with me. And I went to my hairdresser and said, okay, now it's time, because actually by then, I think I was starting to have some new hair growth by that. And so I was like, what's old? What's new? Let's just get a fresh slate, like a rebirth. So much of this is like a rebirth as a person. Everything I was going through with my treatment and things like that, I kept relating it back to birth, I guess, because that's my world. But
yeah, I can see how you would do that, because everything you say, I keep relating it back as well. In general, it sounds like you had a lot of family support and friend support, a community, your doulas, backup doulas coming together, which I think is key. Anytime you're going through a big life experience, whether it be adding a child to your family or something else that's kind of big. But
I preach it to my clients: support, education. So it's like, I have to do this for myself.
Right. So how would you say that, let me say that going through this experience has changed anything about you, the way that you approach birth work? Or do you feel like you kind of have the same perspective?
A little bit of the same perspective that I always had, but just the advocation and the education and the things that we tell our clients to ask about our other options and things like that. And it's hard being that person. That's why I said I need a cancer doula, because your mind's like a blur. You're overwhelmed, especially when it's happening to you. So having somebody guide you through that and having to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I think medical advocacy in general, that's why they, I think, have those patient advocates. It was nice that they assigned one to you, the care person. Did that person advocate in the way a doula would advocate, or
not quite?
Was it more like personal?
Not quite the same. She was wonderful, and she was just what I needed, and we had a good relationship. But yeah, I think like there were, on the flip side now, like I realized there were other options. There were statistics that weren't shared with me. Maybe I didn't have to go through chemo, so things I'm finding out now. But it's funny that I finished my journey this past summer, had my last maintenance infusion. And that summer I was introduced to somebody that lives 30 minutes from me that was a good friend of mine's friend. And we met for the first time. And 3 months later, on Breast Cancer Awareness Month, she went for her mammogram and she was diagnosed with the same breast cancer as me.
Wow.
Yeah. And my friend was like, "Oh my God, the Lord brought you to Chattanooga to be there." And so it's like a joke that I'm her cancer doula. And so, yeah, I was expecting to close that chapter, but here I opened it back up. So I was able to use my experience to kind of help her, right?
Help her. Yeah.
Get a positive impact for her.
So you are complete done with your own treatments.
Complete done. Next month will be 2 years. So I have a screening coming up next month. And right now I'm not focused on that, but I know when I go in for it, those little fears and things will stir up. I'm sure I'll always have that.
For sure.
Right.
On that note, I'm thinking about some deep breathing activities. Did you find yourself using any of your doula skills actually as you were going through treatment, like your physical skills?
I leaned on, distraction and comfort measures. It was kind of nice that my hospital was still having some policies post-COVID, that they weren't allowing visitors unless you were elderly or had some kind of special needs. You came for your treatments by yourself. So I didn't have anybody with me. But it actually worked well for me, I think, because that self-care, it was time out of every week where I would go in. I actually had my family help me create a playlist, family and friends. I went to social media and I'm like, please give them all to me. What are your song suggestions for me to do? Uplifting playlists. And there were songs I'd never heard of. And so I built a playlist. So I would have my headphones on listening to that. As soon as I got there, I'd put it on. And then somebody had gotten me a coloring book and colored pencils. And I did that every week. It was like my way to check out and just focus on me. So this is something that changed my doula work, actually, because now all my clients, I do give out coloring pages. They're birth focused with coloring pencils to all my clients in this little goodie bag that I give them.
Have you had any clients use it?
Yes. I had one that used it and she was not having any contractions or anything like that. And she had put her son to bed for a nap and had gotten on her ball and was starting to color one of the coloring pages as she was doing circles, and her water broke.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that
she received that good oxytocin boost from coloring. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about how you feel it might have impacted your own personal understanding of resilience and surrender and just what you had to do in the strength department that I think also laboring people have to do as well.
Yeah, I did have to kind of let go and just let it unfold. Yeah, kind of surrender to it. My faith deepened through the whole journey. I spent a lot of time, not just during my treatments, kind of self-care and disconnecting, but in the evenings, with prayer and a lot of prayer.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of prayer. So leaning into my faith to kind of get me through. Yeah.
I think everyone kind of finds those things that really help. But the surrender piece, I had a client once tell me that, what did she say? She said, surrender and commit and surrender. Mm-hmm. And I think that works here too, just committing to this journey that you're on and fight that you do consider
it a fight. So it was like 1 week, one treatment at a time, just like we tell our clients, one contraction
at a time.
Take 1 week at a time, see what's thrown my way. And every week it was different challenges, different side effects that I was facing. I also give all my clients a one depends. I'm like, these are great. Here's one to get you started in case you need it. But I was having to utilize those,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. The chemo gets you, the GI symptoms definitely can get
that's humbling, right? And kind of takes you to where the humbleness that sometimes we experience in labor and birth too.
Yeah, you do what you got to do to get through, and it's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay. A very vulnerable place to be.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this next question I want to ask you, it's really about boundaries, because I think sometimes doulas are so giving and willing to really just give and give and give and serve and serve and serve. How was your boundaries around that time? And would you say that has changed now that you're post-treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. It used to be, I would give and give. If I had to give, I would give. Even people that were not my clients, I kind of was known like, reach out to Danielle. She can answer that question for you. She can provide help. She can provide a referral. If I had the ability to help or take you on, I would do it. But I think through this treatment, I learned a lot of patience. I learned that not to sweat the small stuff. I learned about saying no and protecting myself on this journey. And even now, after a move, still battling with it a little bit. I want to get right back into it. But I understand surrendering to this whole thing and going through the move, and like it will all happen as it's supposed to. It'll all play out how it's supposed to. And I'll get to where I need to be when that time is right.
I think that that's so growing because it really is something I think that we struggle with just as doulas in prioritizing our own personal needs. And I feel like these types of life experiences, they really do have the ability to help you reshape and refocus, whether it be an illness, a sickness, a death in the family, things like those big life experiences really, I think, give us time to step back and go, okay, is this where I want to be? Yeah, which is great and within our work because sometimes we need to do that. Talk to me a little bit about, or tell everybody if you had someone that was going through a big life struggle or some sort of life experience, a sickness, an illness, death in the family, something that was big. They're doulas at the same time and they're navigating this life experience. What would you say?
I'd say it worked well for me to continue my work for that distraction because that brings me joy. And we talk about these positive hormones and everything like that. So I know I was feeding off those hormones, and a birth was like, whoo, puts you on that hormone high, which was good for my soul, got me around families and happiness and laughter and all those things. So that was good for me. So if you have the ability to do that and you're able to, that was key. But on the flip side, like we've talked about, setting those boundaries. And even though you might be the caretaker and the person that provides the support, it's so important to accept that and receive that in return.
Yeah, for sure. So as this kind of really is starting to be behind you, even though you are mentoring your dear friend now, what's in the future for your doula work? Do you have an idea of that?
I'm here in Chattanooga where there's more home birth, in Alabama that kind of just got legal and started after I left. So there's more opportunities for home birth. So I hope to support some more home births in the area and have that opportunity to grow there. Although I love my hospital births. With my nursing background, I feel like I can be such a huge advocate in that space and make a difference. I did have my own place, my own location in Alabama. So I hope to, grow things here and build to that. I'm part of a collaborative here. And so I'm loving that and building that and helping that grow as well. And like education has been important. So I hope to expand on that in this area.
And you are taking a full client load now?
I'm happy to, but when you relocate, because I think my very first year as a doula, I had 8 clients. And that was in an area that I knew the medical community and everything like that. So it was a slow start. But my first year here, I had 10. So that was kind of hard because I'm like, let's get right back into it. But again, I think everything with good timing. I think I needed to go slow, at the end of last year to reacclimate, process everything. And same this year. I'm kind of showing myself some grace this year as well. Like, it's okay. I used to have 24 clients a year. That's my goal to get back up to, but it's okay.
Yeah. In time.
That's right. It gives me the ability to grow in other ways.
Yeah, maybe continuing education or something while you're kind of working through this and getting back on your feet and back into the full time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of life that you've lived in the last 2 years. So I'm glad you're giving yourself some grace.
It sure is. We just welcomed a puppy into our home, and it took, because we had a loss of a puppy as well. As soon as I moved here to Chattanooga, we had a loss of a doggy. And so that was another thing. So yeah, it took us a while. It took us a whole year for our hearts to open up and be ready for that. So now we got new puppy Levins in our life.
What's the puppy's name?
Marley.
Marley. Okay. Yeah, well, that's wonderful. And I'm so glad to hear that you're doing well in your post-treatment.
Yes.
And that's behind you, and you're serving and also receiving some doula support from people in different ways.
Absolutely.
That definitely, I think, has a way of teaching us a lot of lessons. So if you could share like one last thought with the doulas that might be listening, what would you share?
I would share, pour into yourself. This field is really hard, and ways that, I help cope is a lot of self-care. I prioritize that in my client loads. Some people want to just book their clients and take them as many as they can get, but you do need to prioritize that time for yourself and for family. What works for me may not work for you, but I usually work 2 to 3 months at a time And then I always block time for family, friends, travel. I love to travel. In between those times, I always, self-care, massage, chiropractor, all those things I do for myself too, and prioritizing my health.
Great advice. Well, thank you for sharing your story today. I knew it was going to be meaningful just watching you and how your approach to it. And, just seeing some of the parallels in needing and receiving care and then giving care also. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you were here to share it with us.
Thank you for having me. It was so good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell everybody where they can connect with you or contact you.
Sure. On Facebook, it's at Labor with Danielle. On Instagram, it's at labor_with_Danielle. And that Instagram, I'm a birth photographer too. So on Instagram, that's basically my birth photography is showcased on there. And then I mentioned that I'm with a collaborative, and that's Birth Chattanooga. So if you go to www.birthchattanooga.com/labor with Danielle, that'll take you directly to my page there.
Awesome. You're going to send me some of your birth photography so we can put a few examples up here.
Oh, sure.
On the video. So, well, it was nice to see you and talk to you. Thank you again for sharing, and we will see each other soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.